The last thing that I would say about creating a community of learners and creating an environment that calls for critical thinking is we have to not be afraid of students giving other students the wrong information. So you can have a conversation, everyone turn to your partner and talk about what you know about the Iraq War. Most of your students are old enough to know something that had happened, a lot of people died, whatever. Very vague things, but they know something. You can't be afraid of someone saying something that's kind of incorrect. You can't be afraid of having to make sure that everything that comes out of someone's mouth is a fact. Because the non-factual information gives you information. It tells you where a student's mind is, right? And so as my last example, I had a review of my science class where we talked about claim and evidence. And Lordy, we talked about what claim and evidence is so much in so many ways, pictures, all types of things. And I still, at the end of the class, had a student who was in the claim section and said that a claim is something that you have decided is yours. And I could have stomped my feet and said, darn it, how many times it's not that I claim this is my bottle, boom, it's mine, so it's mine. How many times have I said that's not a claim? But what I had to realize is, number one, that student had missed a lot of classes, so didn't get some of the information that I'd given around that. That student was interacting in a class that he had missed a lot of information, and that was great, that he still felt comfortable interacting. And that student was in a very personal place at this point in time. And I have to acknowledge that and see how I can use that. So he gave me 2 examples. I said, so explain that a little bit more. He was like, okay, my 2 examples is one that I just did. I claimed this is mine. I took someone else's stuff. The other one was claims court. And so I had to figure out how to use that because that is all I have. You only have what your students give you, and you have to use it. Do not say, no, that's wrong. Please give me the right one. You know, uh-oh, you're the smart one. Come on, if I point at you, I know I get the answer that I want. We have to move away from that. So what I had to do was 2 things. I had to say, okay, in a claim, most times we are reading from somebody else's readings. So we are taking the evidence that they have given us, saying it's mine, and creating a claim from it. Is that the definitive answer of a claim, definition of a claim? No, I had to use what he gave me. The next one, when he said the claims court, I had to say, what do you have to do in claims court? So somebody tell me, what do you have to do? You're in front of a judge. What does the judge want? Prove your case. Evidence. So I could have said, no, here's my definition, read that again, and now tell me what is evidence. Or what is a claim? But I was able to use what he gave me and bring it back around. Thankfully, he gave me something to work with. Sometimes they don't give you as much to work with. But that is an important piece to this, is taking what they give you and manipulating it around. Or saying, like I believe when you said that you gave me like 3 things that was DOK1, and I knew something in there wasn't quite right. Okay, break it down for me. What is the first one? How is that related? Tell me what that looks like. Because I wasn't thinking like that. But just because I wasn't thinking like that does not mean it's wrong. So I gave him the chance to explain to me what I should be understanding from his vocabulary, from his stance. And that is very, very important. And so I just wanted to kind of end with that. I implore everyone to look up Socratic questioning. Always, Ms. Jamie has said this often, always ask why. If you're, hold that up, someone has brought Socratic circles, major thing, big piece. There's also some stuff on here about Socratic circles. It's about questioning. Do not answer the question for your students anymore. That's what critical thinking is. It's to stop answering the question. Stop assuming that the only way that you're going to get the right answer is by only calling on the people who have the right answers, who can duplicate what you said, because that is DOK1. And though you can tap and dance and feel great as a teacher, they cannot take your good feelings as a teacher to a job to say, I now have my GED. So one thing that critical thinking does, and DOK and this new GED and all of that does for sure, is take it away and taking it out of our hands. Okay? So we have 3 minutes, I think, if that, to see if there's any final thoughts, anything that's kind of bearing down on you.
One thing I did not clearly understand, when you ask them to read the document and pick out any words that they didn't understand, how do you follow up from that?
How do you follow up from that? So there's a few things. So number one, the point is not to follow everything. The point is not to answer the questions all the time.
Okay.
That, I would say, especially for our students, to have only that as your homework. You give them a piece of writing, and the only homework that they have is to find 3 things that you're not certain about and put those double question marks by it. What does that tell you? You can look really quickly to say, okay, I see some question marks. This person has at least, if nothing else, looked at the words and put question marks beside it, if not actually read, right? And so that's a quick check. Number 2, it again tells the students that questions are expected and you want them to have questions. And so don't be afraid of being wrong. Then the last thing is it gives you a chance to pull out some of the questions. And so you have a chance to have them ask the questions. You give some answers, but also to see if anyone else had the same questions and if anyone has an answer. So you had those question marks. Okay, I see that. What's your question on that? Okay, great. I see that you don't have any question marks on that. Did you have difficulty with that, or do you really understand it enough to possibly tell him what you thought during that time? So it's not just on you. Did I answer your question? Did you say no?
I
Okay,
meant
go ahead.
the words, not the question.
Uh-huh.
He asked them to pick out the words, not the question.
You talking about word choice or vocabulary?
Yeah.
When he asked them to pick out the word choice when they were in the small groups.
Yes, that they were not familiar with.
So go ahead, please.
I think
I don't think
it
that's-
depends on what I try to do is really stick to what lesson you're doing that day as much as you can. So if there are words in a reading and you're not, let me back up. Sometimes you're trying to teach words in context. So in that way, I would get into, well, how are we going to figure out what that word means? What are the clues?
Oh,
What's the context
okay.
and all that? If I'm not doing that before the lesson, I would just tell them what they mean. I mean, if you're really getting at something else that day and they
Oh,
can't
I
get
see.
through it because they don't know what zeitgeist is,
Just tell them everything.
I'd probably tell them and ask, people to give examples or
Not
whatever. and
not
just
only
go
that,
through it.
but sometimes, like you said, even if they draw a word out, even as a teacher don't know, I pull up my phone, I use my phone, I ask Siri, I'm like, hey, what's this word? Right in the middle of class, and then
Yeah.
go ahead and ask, and it gives you a description. It's
Okay.
and I feel as though it's important to teach them. I don't know everything.
Right.
I'm instructing you based on what we're all in this to do together.
Yeah.
type of thing. So, yeah.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really important, is to stick to what you're supposed to be, I'm sorry, Donald, doing. Yeah, I think that was a question around writing as well. If you're not doing commas and there's comma issues, leave it alone. Did they get to the point? Did they do do what you were asking of them? But again, if it is about commas, then you do talk through it. And you don't just say, this is wrong, put it there. You say, this is wrong, which comma rule does this go with? Yes. Oh.
I work with special education students and low literacy also. And the strategy that has been very helpful for them is to write it down. I have a slate on it just next to them that they can write a word that they don't understand. But after that, I go back with them in the reading aloud to find out what do you think the meaning will be before we go to the real definition, and help them a lot. And I found out that they know the word, but not the way that it's written,
Yeah.
but the synonym.
Yeah.
And that extends also the vocabulary, finding what would be a synonym for that. Is that an antonym? Something like that. It also helped them a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and definitions versus examples, that's something that we talk about all the time at Academy of Hope. An example for our students is a definition. Okay? So again, don't expect Webster's definition. Expect to see, do you understand what this word is? If they give you an example of the word, they do understand what the word is. Okay?
We have the word.
We had a thing here. Are you going to say something about the word piece?
We just
Okay,
had a
quickly.
word in the reading recapitulator, and one of the questions was recaps in the word. All right, that means to summarize, go back, replay it.
Yeah, exactly.
They came up with it, not me.
Good.
I think it's important that the students is able to give an example, but also able to give a succinct and clear definition as well. Because I find that a lot of my students struggle with articulation and they struggle with getting a clear idea off. So
Yeah.
I understand that the example is their answer, but I scaffold and ask them questions to get them to the definition, because the example is not my expectation, the definition is my expectation.
And just make sure you have a reason for that expectation, and that your reason isn't in my circle and in my life. I have to have the right definition, and as a teacher, if I'm around a lot of teachers, I know that they will get on me if not. That's not the world that they live in. That's not where they're going. And so scaffolding is very important. Deciding why you need them to get to that point of actual definition is important, but also allowing possibly for all of those things to work together. The one thing that I fear is when someone says, no, that's not right. Give me a definition. But they gave you exactly what they thought they wanted that you needed. You
But
see?
so I
And so that's the
clarify,
only
I say, well,
thing.
that was an example. Thanks for that example. That's a great example. Now, how can we use this example to give us a definition, to
Good.
construct a definition? That's what I'm saying. I don't want just to stop at the
Good.
example, because that's not enough.
Good.
And I don't want to just settle for what they already know. I want to push them to get to a level that they don't even think they can get to just
Absolutely.
yet.
Great.
So that's where I am. I have very high expectations for myself and for my students, so I just don't want to stop at what they already know.
Absolutely. Again, just have a purpose for it.